Oh boy.
We live. All right, live back at it again. Grumpy Mondays, a play on Grumpy Mondays, but with Steve Grumbine. Hope everybody's having a good start to your week. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. Quite a lot going on, and today's discussion could possibly trigger some folks. So a trigger warning out there for those that just want to burn the whole thing down and only want to criticize. There will be topics today that might trigger you. So we'll get into that. Also, I'll explain the yellow vest. Let's just wait for a couple more people to come on in. We have a big week here, Steve. You probably don't know all of it, but a story that we've been working on, I don't even know. It's been for months now. Not delayed because of us, but delayed for a lot of reasons outside of us, including it's not pleasant. It's often not pleasant publishing stories through corporate outlets or bigger outlets because for some reason they all move at the pace of a tortoise. But with that said, this week we should be having a major investigative story coming out on the topic of the Flint water cover-up, which I don't know. I don't see many people covering that anymore, 7.5 years later. So we look forward. We don't want to give you the exact day because subject to change, but it looks like this week will be a major bombshell story that Jen and I have been working on for months. That's kind of a follow-up to the January story we did in The Intercept that got a hold of former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder's phone calls, as well as other things that blew the lid on the fact that he lied to Congress and that he knew about the deadly Legionnaire's disease in Flint that killed people, made a lot of people sick. He knew about it a year and a half earlier than he told Congress. Fortunately for us, this story, this follow-up, is not going to be published on the same day that a president is impeached, because we published that on the same day Trump was impeached for a second time. So hopefully when it's published, there won't be other stuff drowning it out, and we could get finally some attention on what I view is a cover-up on par with Watergate, personally. I think if
Easily.
I think if there was no president involved in Watergate, what we're revealing this week is much bigger. So I'll talk about that later. Smash the like button. 140 people watching. Need everybody to press the like button. We're sending out the text message too, so more people will see this. Steve Grumbine, co-founder of Real Progressives, who's doing a lot of other things too under the Real Progressives umbrella, is with us. We've been having you almost every Monday, and I think really the conversations we're having aren't being had in many places. So let's start with, I wrote a Substack piece. Colin, if you could show the headline. I wrote a Substack piece, that's why I was late, that in today's progressive media climate might actually be viewed as traitorous or treachery, because I actually gave credit to Bernie Sanders for something. I think you can criticize people and while also not being so nihilistic that you can focus on some victories, some positive things. And I think there's a major positive thing going on right now that Bernie is responsible for, Steve, and has major ramifications, not only for now, but the future. And I think it also is tied to modern monetary theory.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just give people a background before I turn to you, Steve. This is from the Political article. The headline is "Strange but True, Bernie Takes a Very Pragmatic Turn." So the headline doesn't sound so good, right? When we think pragmatic, we think incremental change, crumbs, all that. But if you actually read the story, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the beginning. Bernie Sanders gave Washington whiplash this week, and it was all part of his plan. Barely 24 hours after Vermont senator publicly rejected a $3.5 trillion spending deal following a Monday meeting with President Biden, he turned around to tout it as the most transformational policy proposal in nearly 100 years. The shift in tone was a tactic Sanders used to coax moderate Democrats into going far higher than they might have otherwise felt comfortable. After he had insisted on shooting for the moon with a $6 trillion budget proposal, $3.5 trillion suddenly looked reasonable. And I want to move down, Colin, if you can. Tim Kaine, who is as corporate hack as they come, basically made the point that I think is accurate. Quote, Bernie Sanders is like a human embodiment of shifting the Overton window, Kaine said. We wouldn't be here without him putting out $6 trillion. So, you know, for all the haters, and I've criticized Bernie Sanders. I've criticized him for folding like a cheap tent to Biden. I mean, let's go down the list. He got 0 substantial concessions from Biden in exchange for his endorsement. He said, let's get Trump out of there and then vote for Biden and fight him on day one. That didn't happen. When Biden, preemptively folded on a $15 minimum wage because of the parliamentarian BS reason, Bernie didn't really push back. So there's a lot to criticize Bernie on. But in this case, $3.5 trillion is not incremental change. It's the largest non-corporate bailout because they've spent trillions for corporate bailouts. It's the largest social spending package in modern American history. If you add what is not a done deal, but potentially $600 billion extra for actual infrastructure spending on roads, bridges, all that, it's $4.1 trillion. And Bernie, he said on the campaign trail often when I covered him, you don't start out asking for half a loaf. You demand the full loaf. So obviously Bernie Sanders knew, we're not getting $6 trillion, but I'm going to huff and puff that I'm not going to accept anything less, knowing, well, they're not going to go for $6 trillion, but maybe they'll go for more than the typical $1 trillion in additional spending. $3.5 trillion, I know a lot of naysayers and people who just don't care and they're all frauds can't see anything good anymore. But that, Steve, a decade ago, that number would have been laughed out of the Senate.
Absolutely. Think about this. Obama put up $900 billion to get us out of the worst financial collapse in U.S. history in the Great Recession, bigger than the Great Depression. And he only put $900 billion up there, just as a point of reference for how huge this amount is. And I want to tip my hat to another guy that most people probably don't know this guy's name, and they should get to know his name. And that's John Yarmuth, who is the head of the budget committee. And he came out the other day on C-SPAN and gave a freaking clinic on the fact that don't listen to these people. We create the money, guys. We can pay for it, period. This is the head of the budget committee. Well, guess what? Randall Wray, who I had interviewed a few weeks back on Macro and Cheese, had been instrumental in planting these seeds in Congress over and over again. I'd love to know who to give credit to for giving Stephanie Kelton's book to him, but whoever it is, he referenced it straight up in the interview. And so with Bernie and now Yarmuth and all the other work going in, my track record of hating Biden is a mile long, and my track record of not supporting the candidates Bernie ends up endorsing is equally long. So for me, I'm telling you right now, this is a huge win.
And I also, by the way, for those that came late, this yellow vest was sent to me today. I got it today, from courtesy of Steve Grumbind as well as Eric Kasner. Is that his last name? Eric
Kasner is I don't want to take credit for it. I want it all to go to Eric. He worked his tail end off.
Yes. So Eric is with the Yellow Vesters. If you recall, Status Quo was literally the only independent outlet that went to the shadow DNC convention, that didn't actually have a convention in the Milwaukee building. But the Yellow Vesters, still during the height of the pandemic, went there anyway to protest Biden, the Democrats, the incrementalism during a pandemic. And we went and we interviewed, for a pandemic, I think there were a good 20 to 30 of them there for the entire week of the Shadow Convention. Eric was there, others were there, and they have been instrumental in organizing the Medicare for All March that's coming up this weekend. So they sent me this. I'm proud to wear it. The current plan for Status Coup is to have Jen cover it in D.C., the major march, to have Jen cover it there. So we will be on the ground covering it. Thanks for the super chats. I'll try to read them as I go. We got one, but hold on. Connor, Kami John, $5. Love the vest, Jordan. Much love. And what up, Steve Grumbine? Appreciate it. My Vision, $4.99. Thanks. Fly Chomper Fly, $5. Jordan, hope you and Real Progs are promoting this weekend's National Medicare for All March. Just did it. We'll talk about that more in a little bit too. Lana Del hates the clock, $10. Go Rep Yarmouth of Louisville, Kentucky. And 86 Blackberry White, $5. Yarmouth knows MMT. It's time for the rest of politicians to follow the lead. So why I think this is important. First of all, let's just go through the actual legislation, because obviously you want to know what's in it. Colin, if you could bring up the Axios story. So proposed in it is extending the child tax credit. I think that's an incremental thing, but it's something. Senior Democratic aides said the duration of each credit's enactment will be determined by congressional scoring, whatever. There are significant climate policies in here, create 80% clean electricity and 50% economy-wide carbon emissions by 2030. I don't think that goes far enough at all, but it's something. And remember, this $3.5 trillion does not mean the fight for more stops. So it's not all or nothing. We still need to pressure, shame, and in some cases harass Congress to actually meet the moment. If you're noticing Germany is flooding, if you're noticing the West Coast has floods, not to mention the extreme heat. In addition to the climate proposals, more funding for clean energy and vehicle tax incentives. By the way, China has dramatically offered tax subsidies for electric vehicles to its citizens. Keep universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-old children, child care and community college, increase funding for historically black colleges, expanding Medicare to include prescription, hearing, dental, and vision, reduce prescription drug costs, and apparently, it's not a done deal, but there is talk of it being moved down to 60. So those are the main things. And to be clear, I think people know Steve and I well enough to know this is not our, utopia. This is not in any way meets the scale of the multiple crises. But again, without a progressive in the White House, without progressives having majorities in anybody, Bernie Sanders basically just forced a corporate Democratic Party to actually provide substantial investment. And I think this is important for a few reasons, Steve. First of all, just on the merits, what it achieves. Number two, it isn't the Democratic Party who did it. It's Bernie. And as I noted in my Substack piece, it helps progressives debunk multiple myths and gaslighting and propaganda from the Democratic Party and the corporate media. Number one, that progressives are just radical ideologues that can't achieve anything in government. I mean, that's
obviously
not true.
That's a lie.
That's a lie. This was Bernie Sanders who drove up the price to $3.5 trillion. Another one that progressives. What did I write? Hold on, I'll just rip it from my thing. It also prevents Biden and the Democrats from stealing ownership of the bill to message for the midterms as well as potentially 2024 to basically say it was them. No, if Bernie and the squad was smart, they'd come out right now taking ownership for this and saying, the only reason you have this is because of us. So that voters know, just like they supported Medicare for all in the presidential primary, but ended up going with Biden, that they know this is what you get with progressive leadership. It is possible to spend a lot of money. You don't have to pay for all of it in conventional ways. And the other important thing, I think, is it does counter to a certain degree the tried and true propaganda from Democrats and the corporate media that we can't afford it, or these types of things would alienate swing voters. So in many ways, outside of just the actual money going to certain things, this, I think, puts progressives on the map and helps debunk a lot of the corporate bullshit. Your thoughts?
Well, obviously major things have just changed. It doesn't matter whether I like the Democratic Party or not. Let me be clear. What we're talking about here is outcomes. I'm not talking about the party. The outcomes of what has just happened are irrefutable. I saw one comment, and I don't disagree with them. Let me be crystal clear. They said, if you accept less, you always take less, or something to that effect, right? And my thoughts on this are that when you're in an impossible game, like, for example, if, you don't have any support whatsoever in Congress other than 3 or 4 other people, and you can leverage whatever strength you have to get more, I think you should do that. And I think that that's what Bernie and even, I was shocked to see AOC out there tweeting some tough language. Now, mind you, I want to see it in action.
You stole my next thing.
Oh, sorry about that. But
go ahead.
Yeah, well, you could show it in a second. But the fact of the matter is that even AOC has come out and done some things. No, there's plenty of very legitimate criticism for these people. They have not done what I'd like to see them do. They have not been strong in the way that I'd like to see them strong. However, I've been there to kick them when they're wrong. I want to be there to lift them up when they're right, because I want to encourage that behavior. The alternative with them not doing this is revolution, but we don't have anybody ready for that. So let's put that off to the side. I have looked around. There are no revolutionaries left in America. They're not interested. They're not hungry for it. They can say what they want, but the minute tough gets going, they get going too. So at this point in time, we've got to look for the best we can do, right? Now, that's not to say you had to vote for these people, but celebrate a win when you get one. And here is a win for sure. It's paradigm shifting. I can't believe I'm going to pat Tim Kaine on the back, but he's absolutely right. Bernie Sanders is a walking, talking Overton window shifting embodiment of change. And even though he always takes less because he is incrementally, he's got a proclivity for incrementalism, but it's not incrementalism like that's what he wants. He just takes as much as he can get and keeps fighting. So to his credit, that's score win, big win for Bernie. And I'm not sure who else I'm ready to give credit to, but I'm definitely ready to give credit to Bernie Sanders.
Well, I also think, and I'm seeing the comments, and I'll respectfully just tell you guys, like, reassess how you're thinking of things. People are like, Bernie will always take less. Guys, he just got $3.5 trillion. That's not less. Like, yep. There is no way. Frankly, even if Bernie Sanders was president, there's almost no chance that you would get $6 trillion through Congress for anything, unless he just started doing executive actions willy-nilly that could be contested in court. So I'm not telling you not to dream, but we're here to tell you a little thing, something called reality too. So when you say, oh, he'll always fold, he'll always sell, he'll always sell out, he'll always this. Well, let's start with how this happened. First of all, it wasn't just that he said 6 trillion and set that as the marker. He originally said, yeah, there will be no bipartisan bill, because the bipartisan bill is separate, which is about over $1 trillion for infrastructure, really just 600 billion in new spending. The rest is just repackaged money that wasn't used. But Bernie put out the mark that, yeah, no, I'm not voting for a bipartisan package if there's not separate a reconciliation package. And without Bernie's vote, it's going to be hard enough for them to get 10 Republicans. They can't afford to lose any Democrats on a bipartisan infrastructure deal. So Bernie, it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, Steve. They were all pissing and moaning, understandably, because he and the squad didn't force the vote.
I was with them.
But then, I was too. But then, when he actually plays some hardball and says, I'm not voting for this, and stands by it, not voting for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which Biden wants because he's, old and still waxes poetic for bipartisanship, then it's still not good enough. Like, people need to make up their minds. Do you just want to hate every politician? They're all frauds. They're all sellouts. It doesn't even matter the actual specifics of bills or anything like that. Or he played hardball. He said, there will be no bipartisan bill if there's not a reconciliation package. Then he said, $6 trillion. He bluffed. I'm not going anywhere under $6 trillion. He was obviously going to, and he got $3.5 trillion. Listen, I've been criticizing and complaining about incremental change forever. $3.5 trillion is not incremental. I think there's another element, Steve, to it too. It's like anything, when Social Security and Medicare passed, it became normalized. That was the expectation among, in that case, older voters. But once you push out an entitlement, it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle, because it changes everything, not just the Overton window, but the actual laws. So now that you have vision, dental hearing, now that you have universal pre-K, it again more normalizes entitlements, more spending, those kind of things. So then if it's, I don't know, Nita Turner in 2024 or whoever's the next progressive candidate for the Senate, progressive candidates for Congress, it's not as, they can't really boogeyman bold policy proposals as much because they're happening. Now, do I think only dental, vision, and hearing is enough for older Americans? No. We should have it all for everybody. But again, I think, unfortunately, progressives, due to Bernie's revolution, maybe had the false impression that this kind of stuff can happen overnight, because we all got caught up in the Bernie movement and didn't realize we're making progress. It's just not fast enough for the crisis, but we are making progress.
Yeah, I look at the people that are hating on this, and I wish that I could take in rapid fashion my phone out and go through their Twitter feed and go through their Facebook feed and all that stuff and find out how many times they were actively helping get modern monetary theory promoted and out the door. I want to see the haters that don't like this, that are ready to kick cans and yell and scream and check out. I want to see how many of them were proactively learning the economics that help make this happen, because that's what is making this happen. See, once you pulled the wool off of the eyes and once you revealed all the stuff that we could do during the pandemic, it started becoming incredibly hard to hide that lie anymore. Add in the fact that Stephanie Kelton's Deficit Myth book is a New York Times bestseller many times over again, and you've got no excuse. And when you've got a centrist establishment Dem in John Yarmouth that is ahead of the game for more progressives out there who said, oh, it's just, they didn't even pay attention. I swear to God, they ignored it. Okay? When you got people that have ignored MMT and then they have shit to talk about Bernie, I don't even listen to them. I realized that they didn't do anything when it mattered, and they're still not doing something when it mattered. And right now,
I also want to point out, off of that, I mean, it's sorry to call out Tony Clifton in the chat. This BS. The bill hasn't been written, yet alone voted on. Well, first of all, Schumer has publicly pledged for $3.5 trillion. So has Biden. I don't trust them, but they did put down the public marker. So maybe instead of sitting there, Tony, and the rest of you, and bitching basically that, it hasn't been airdropped to you, maybe take a pause from the nihilism, take a pause from the cynicism, and rally around Bernie Sanders to make it happen. Because an organized army behind a politician who actually, for once, is playing hardball and actually has gotten results, you could actually, if people would rally around him and pressure, whether it be protest, online, whatever, to actually make this happen, probably more productive than Tony, you whining, this is BS, this bill hasn't even been written, it hasn't passed. Okay, well, how are you going to get it to pass? Because it's not easy to get the Democrats on the record for this amount of money. So the way to hold them to it is to, instead of bitching at Bernie Sanders, support him. And to me, this isn't about Bernie Sanders. I don't really give a shit. You could like or hate Bernie Sanders, but we can't get to a point in politics or life that we no longer are capable of seeing any good and no longer could credit people when they do good. There's another element here, Steve. You mentioned it. I want to show this AOC tweet. And let me tell you something. I've been very critical of her. So have you. Yep. The squad, to me, is a group of, weak tweeters. And I'm not doing jumping jacks that AOC tweeted something that signals hardball. But it is something. Colin, if you could show this tweet. AOC tweeted at the end of last week, House progressives are standing up. If Senator Manchin and the rest of the Senate approve the reconciliation bill, then we will approve their bipartisan bill. But if they try to strip immigration reform, child care, climate action, then we're at an impasse. It's a no-go. So to me, listen, with AOC in particular, I understand people saying I'll believe it when I see it, because there was a lot of cynicism attached to that tweet. But you can't have it both ways, folks. You can't rightfully bash her for going on Morning Joe and giggling along with them that she's not doing anything. I mean, they literally said, you've been really holding your tongue against the Democratic Party. And she giggled along and said, why, thank you for noticing. But then if she's doing what you're criticizing her for not doing, yes, it's a tweet, but it's public. She just put down a marker, folks. Now, it's up to you to A, support her and the squad if they're actually going to play hardball on this, and shame them, and if need be, primary them if they fold on this too. But it's remarkable to me, and it really shows you, Steve, just how angry and frustrated progressives are. And this isn't
rightfully so, by the way.
What's that?
Rightfully so, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Doesn't make you bad because you've gotten into this cynicism and nihilist. But if you're criticizing these folks, whether it be Bernie and the squad, and I've been criticizing them for months for not playing hardball, for not going bold, for not actually doing anything close to politics 101, which is, say, I'm not voting for this unless you give me this. And then when they're doing it, you're still not happy, then I don't really know if it's about the issues anymore for you. Maybe in your heart you think it is, but maybe it's just about being angry and being pissed off.
I think there's a click, dude. I think there's a click. I think there is and this is what is so messed up about our movement. There's all these little micro clicks out there. Group A focuses on Syria only. They ignore MMT. They ignore everything else. And they're all important stuff, but they focus in this one little myopic area. And then anything you say that counters what that click tells them to think, it's over. Now, you can literally despise Bernie Sanders and despise AOC and despise the squad and not trust them for anything, and despise Joe Biden and despise the Democratic Party, and still realize that at this moment in time, they did something. Even if you want to call it accidentally, they did something good. They're pushing for something good. And so even if you're a Green Party or independent, and they're still your representatives in your district, whether you voted for them or not, it's time to step up and be activist and push them and celebrate what they've done, not for their benefit, but for our benefit, to make that the norm, to show that this isn't something that we support. I mean, it's just the way it's done. You don't get any brownie points for being out there just acting like some dude with like zits from like 17 years old and the hair greasy part of the side going, yeah, man, like totally like, I don't know, man, like fuck AOC and stuff. Who cares, man? Just stop.
And also,
just stop.
Steve, we talk about psychology a lot. Colin, can you put the AOC tweet back up? We talk about psychology a lot. So listen, I think AOC is like a lot of progressives, particularly in Congress. They're a fire-breathing activist when they get out, and once they're in, they get hoodwinked into this, it's a long game strategy. It doesn't mean they're corrupt. It just means they're very naive. because I think in her case, and possibly the rest of the squad, they have been hoodwinked by Nancy Pelosi, their Democratic Party, people on their committees, and saying, you got to form relationships, you got to play the long game, all this. And I think they've been hoodwinked, and that's why, in large part, they've pretty much done nothing. But it's human nature. If AOC, yes, it's a tweet. So I've seen the people, oh, Jordan, tweets we could believe in. Okay, well, she's publicly, whether it's through tweet or smoke signal, she's publicly saying it's a no-go. I'm not going to vote for it. So if she moves back on that, that's really problematic for a politician. I mean, for a corporate hack, it's less problematic because they all, moonwalk. But if you're actually a progressive, yeah, if you move back on your public word that you're not going to vote for it, that's hard. So the fact that she did this, I don't know, Steve, what's human nature? If she's putting herself out there that I'm going to play hardball, which we assume most of the squad would follow her. Well, if she's putting herself out there, what would make her stick to it more? People still calling her a sellout, fraud, this and that, or people rallying around her? And again, it's not about AOC. I don't care. Replace her with anyone else. Rallying around the politicians that are publicly saying, yeah, we're not going to vote or go along if we don't get these X, Y, and Z in the bill. So I understand why people are angry and frustrated, but at a certain point, you have to kind of make up your mind, because if you're going to criticize people for not doing X, and then when they start doing it, you're still not happy, then they could do nothing. And Steve and I have talked, we're not only in belief, we don't only believe these crises can be solved through electoral politics. It's just one of the major levers. But right now, we don't have a president in the White House. We don't have majorities in either body. Frankly, we don't really even have any leaders in our movement right now.
That's very true.
Anything like a 3.5 trillion package that does expand and go towards policy priorities of ours is progress. And again, you take that progress and you join it with the ongoing movements, Sunrise Movement, hopefully a general strike sooner than later, the March for Medicare for All. You don't just say, okay, we got these things, we could stop going for all of it. No, you do both. But I think, it's easy to criticize. It's easy to criticize Bernie, them. It's a lot harder to recognize, oh, this is a step in the right direction. Let's rally around them to get more. And also, when things are passed that end up being popular, it also pressures the Democrats to push for more of those things because, yeah, they care about keeping the money flowing, but they also care about keeping power. The COVID relief bill, for example, was wildly popular, the 1.9 trillion. So that gives them the drive and comfort politically that we could go a little further because these things are popular.
Jordan, I think the crowd needs to focus on when the debt ceiling fight is going to be. Okay. Debt ceiling is going to come up. The debt ceiling is an artificial construct it's a relic from the gold standard era that has no place whatsoever in any conversation anymore, but it's a very real rule, a construct that is used to stop any and all progressive legislation. Always there waiting for us to have this fight. If you have chosen for whatever perverse reason to ignore MMT, now is your time to be a real activist, a real one, not a fake one, a real one. Learn this shit, because when that fiscal cliff hits, you need to know that, because that is how you're going to fight for the real big package, the 6 trillion package. That's how you're going to fight for a Green New Deal at like 12 trillion. That's how you're going to fight for reparations, folks, for like 12 trillion. That's how you're going to fight for universal, education. And do you know that there is no right to an education in America right now? Literally, there is no federal right to an education at all right now. And so there, just adding dental care to the bill, just adding all of these things could be taken away in a heartbeat if you don't understand that we can indeed afford it. And you don't in turn then pressure not only your Congress critters and your senators and your local reps, but pressure your other activists. Go to alternative social media accounts and pepper them. Demand they start talking about this. Don't let them get away with not talking about it. Because that's the only way this stuff makes sense. You can't just say, okay, AOC, I'm going to drink a Slurpee now go make it happen. Go make it rain and go back to being edgy and cool and, whatever. I mean, Beavis and Butthead are over, man. It's time to get into the game. So I hope that folks do take that time, because this whole John Yarmuth thing is huge. If you're not paying attention to anything else, probably didn't hear it on any of the other alternative media sites. You didn't hear it on mainstream media, except for C-SPAN. So it's time to really elevate the important stuff so we can win. I'm telling you right now, I think it may be the most brutal failure of our movement to listen to Hillary Clinton cackle at us in 2016 and listen to all of them cackle at us in 2020 about how you're going to pay for it, Bernie, pie in the sky. And people still didn't bother to learn this stuff. What is wrong with you? Why not? Why would you snatch victory out of there so that you can lose it all? Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It's just ridiculous. Guys, be effective. Be effective. This is it. This is where the rubber meets the road.
And Das Boss Fleisch, 549 euros. I really hope Nina Turner could win the unfair race for Congress. The smear pieces against her are outrageous. I agree. I hope she starts going on the offense against her opponent, because, boy, have they been going on offense against her. Keyberts, 4.99. Everyone, if you could please donate to Nina's campaign. The establishment is sending mailers to the constituents, with egregious lies about Nina. I've said my piece about Nina Turner. I think people, are upset and adding her to the sellout list because she's not ranting and raving against Biden and the Democrats on the campaign trail, which would be political suicide if she did that, because it's a very, very establishment blue district. But, if you, in your mind, think we're better off without Nina Turner in Congress, then I think you just really, really need to reevaluate things. It doesn't mean you don't pressure her if and when she gets in there and doesn't do the things or doesn't fight the way we know her to fight. But for you to just preemptively say, oh, well, she doesn't sound as fire-breathing during this campaign, so she's a sellout. I just think this is so lowest common denominator, race to the bottom thinking. She is not running for Congresswoman of YouTube. She's running in Ohio's 11th district, where the corporate Democratic establishment, last congressperson, won by 60 points in the general election. It's a vote blue no matter who, majority black city that maybe doesn't hate the Democratic Party as much as you do. So realize she's not running for Senate. That would be a little different. And she's not running for president, which would be much different. It's a congressional district. You got to run for that specific district. I know it hurts your brain, but that's the reality. Fly Chomper Fly, $5. Those who are still fighting by canvassing for local reps, phone banking for Nina Turner in her tight race, we know we got to keep moving. I agree. And I agree with Steve, too, because honestly, I get it. I mean, listen, I'm reading a book now about how Biden basically accidentally won. It's called Lucky. And it's crushing just reading it, because there's so much behind the scenes of Bernie's campaign that you read through it and, oh my God, major mistake here, major mistake here, major fuck up here, major naivety here. I'm reading this book and it's so clear that if he would have done X, Y, and Z different, he would have won the nomination. But putting that aside, everybody has a right to be upset because the planet is on fire. Frankly, $15 minimum wage is not enough. We don't have Medicare for all. Doesn't seem like we're going to get that. I get the criticism. I get the cynicism. But at the end of the day, the progressive movement, progress is in it. The word progress is in it. Don't forget that. So that's different than incremental crumbs. When we are making progress, and I would argue 3.5 trillion plus another 600 billion, that's progress. That's not only shifting the Overton window, but it's actually the Overton window going into practice in law. That's progress. And you cannot get into this habit of just being a dead earther politically, where everything is bad, it's all terrible, if we don't have Medicare for all, airdrop to us tomorrow, then these people are useless. That's just not a good way of going about it. Steve, I wanted to also bring up, let's face reality. In terms of politics, a president generally only has, if he or she is lucky, 6 months to a year to get the major things done, because then you're already going into midterms. So, the Republicans already are blocking everything you do, but they definitely won't do anything close to midterms. And a lot of the corporate Democrats who are deathly afraid of losing re-election, they won't go for bold things if they're up for re-election. So you really only have, unless it's a unique situation like Obama had a major majority and did nothing with it other than a neoliberal health insurance program. But the fact that this is happening now, nothing else was going to happen if Bernie didn't drive this 3.5 trillion home. Nothing was going to happen probably for the next 3 years, because it looks like Democrats are going to lose the House and the Senate. Very tight margins. And, the way things are looking, demographics also, gerrymandering, Republicans look like they could easily, particularly the Senate, take back the Senate, but possibly the House too. So I think people need to realize, yes, I agree with you on learning MMT, focusing on that, demanding politicians start focusing on that. Medicare for All march this weekend, Sunrise Movement. I hope a lot of these people marching start thinking, hey, what if we add economic boycotts to our bodies in the street? But in terms of brass tacks, if Bernie didn't drive this to fruition, there wasn't anything major happening for the next possibly 3 years, Steve.
It's absolutely true. When Bernie gave up the nomination, and Biden took it, that was a gut punch, like an epic gut punch. I didn't expect anything good to happen. Joe Biden has a 50-year history of doing everything possible to cut spending, of doing everything possible to make it that Wall Street can win and we lose, bankruptcy laws, you name it. But to that man's credit, right? But to his credit, there's been a few things that have happened that have been right. And do not confuse me as a Biden guy, right? That's not what I'm saying here. But I am saying in order to get these things done, we don't have an extra 15 years for you to organize a third party. Right now, in this moment, we have to organize toward issues and fight rapidly to win the climate battle. It's quite obvious that the Arctic is burning up, that the swings in heat are epic, out of control. We need to do things yesterday. Is this enough? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But once you put your foot in the water and you taste test some success, people like to be successful more than once. They want to keep being successful. I'm hoping that we take this moment to not rally around Joe Biden or rally around even Bernie for that matter, but rally around the point that they're advancing right now, and that is Medicare for all. Even though that's not what's there, rally for that anyway, like we are with this march. Rally for the most you can get for a Green New Deal, not the minimal, but keep pushing and advancing it. Don't check out and don't get so cynical, because our lives are on the line. I'm not even worried about the politics of it all. I'm worried about us as a movement uniting once again to push for the things that we care about, and do celebrate the win of the policy, celebrate the progress, celebrate seeing nothing to 3.5 trillion. You haven't heard that before, to Jordan's point. 3.5 trillion is new area for social spending. It's a whole new ball game. Let's focus on that. Let's make that 6 trillion next time. Let's focus on these things to get the taste test out there so we can have reparations, global reparations, Green New Deal. You got to push for this. And this is the only way it's going to happen, because it's the finances. It's the idea how you're going to pay for it and all the special interests that are blocking it. So, yeah, we got to get behind these guys and gals, even if it's just a strategic move on your part. Put your cynicism in your back pocket momentarily and get this shit pushed forward. Make it happen.
And I'll also say, Steve, putting aside this 3.5 trillion, look at what the majority of the left has been doing for Biden's presidency. Seriously. Yeah, there was a pandemic, so obviously some people can't protest or organize or do anything. A growing number of people, instead of being active on any of these issues, joining an organization, joining a march, protesting, pressuring your congressperson or senator, they've just been rotating, watching different YouTubes, ranting about nothing being done.
Each other.
Right. Ranting about each other and ranting about politicians not doing anything. But those people haven't been doing anything. And of course, a lot of these people work 2 jobs or have kids and don't have the time to do such things. And that's totally understandable. But not a lot of actual productive things. And this is, by the way, what happened under Obama. Progressives went back to sleep. They were momentarily woken up during Occupy Wall Street, but people felt deflated because Obama obviously hoodwinked pretty much everyone. And there was zero movement. And people just said, oh, well, everything is lost. Everything is bad. This man promised to part the ocean, and he's, obviously a fraud. And the left went back to sleep. And that's kind of, to a certain degree, what's been happening. But instead of going back to sleep, the left has kind of just enveloped themselves into a inferno of rage. And again, Steve and I have already put the caveat, we understand the anger, but there is opportunities out there. And frankly, yes. Joe Biden, he can be shamed, believe it or not. If he feels he's going to lose, or his successor is going to lose, or, he goes with the political wins. His only ideology has really been going with public opinion, not on things that his donors won't allow, but he's never really been firmly, other than like imperialism and war, he's never really been a firm ideologue like, let's say, Paul Ryan. He's more like your average politician that floats with the wind and is full of shit. So if he starts seeing, oh, wow, these things are popular, this and that, you could pressure him into doing more. Now, let's not be naive. He's not going to do Medicare for all. He's not going to do those things. The only way we're going to get those things is if we start winning more victories. One of those things that people haven't been doing, Nina Turner's running. She was up big. Other than, physical bodies on the ground in her local campaign. I mean, I was there. I was talking to people on the campaign. There really isn't a massive progressive surge or progressive organizing on her behalf around the country right now. And there should be, because whether she's ranting and raving strong enough for you, if you don't think Nina Turner winning that congressional seat, why do you think Clyburn got involved? Hillary got involved. Apparently, Debbie Wasserman Schultz just gave money to Nina's opponent. I would bet my bottom dollar that you're going to see Nancy Pelosi possibly get involved in terms of an endorsement. Maybe Obama, for that matter. You think they're getting involved in the 11th District of Ohio because they think Nina Turner's going to come into Congress and fold like a cheap tent? So I'd like to see people on what you were talking about, modern monetary theory, as well as other live things. Listen, it's entertaining to watch progressives online beating the hell out of each other. It's not exactly effective to achieving anything. Your thoughts?
No, I was on with Jamarl Thomas this morning talking about it. I was on another show the other day talking about, I'm done with the whole infighting. If people want to start pointing at each other again, leave me out of it. I'm so disinterested. I'm so bored of it. So yesterday's news of it. But I want to bring it back to something that you were doing, and that's the other pandemic and the housing crisis and all this stuff. You got to think about this by putting this 3.5 trillion out there and just getting people to start grappling with what 3.5 trillion even is. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? These are a way of expanding that thought process to helping people out of housing problems. I mean, this is still going on. It didn't go away. It's not over. We're talking about Medicare for all. We're talking about Bernie Sanders. We're talking about infrastructure. But these things that Jordan's been covering and we've been covering through the New Untouchables, it hasn't gone away. So all of this stuff requires one common theme, and that's understanding how the economics works. And so for me, I'm hoping that you can be a multi-threaded individual to focus on all these issues, but still understand at the end of it, you got to answer the question of how you're going to pay for it. And you're going to also have to answer why the debt ceiling is a joke. You're going to have to also answer why inflation's not really a thing from printing money. You got to answer a bunch of these questions, because it's not just you and me that we got to deal with. It's all the other unbelieving people out there that sit there plugged into Rachel Maddow and get their propaganda force-fed right through their forehead. We've got to penetrate their skull caps with information, and we've got to start making people realize that we can, in fact, do nice things for each other.
And I also think there's another element before you go, Steve. Listen, I don't want to scare anybody. I'm not saying this to fearmonger, but the reality is the reality. I don't think this coronavirus is ending anytime soon. Unfortunately, I think, Jen and I already got into the vaccine discussion last week. I'm not going to relitigate it. If you don't want to get vaccinated, I think that's a poor decision. I know people in my own life that are being misled by a lot. They send me articles basically from like Robert Kennedy Jr. and other anti-vaxxers who are just against vaccines, period. It doesn't matter which vaccine. But putting aside whether you want to get vaccinated or you don't, I think you should. I don't think, if as people we believe, women have a right to choose, make choices for their own body. The flip side is you don't have a right to make choices for your body that might harm somebody else. And that's what not getting vaccinated does. You're not just making a choice for yourself. You could very easily get it. You might be asymptomatic or you might not, and pass it to somebody else. And that other person could get very sick or die. That's the reality. But putting all that aside, all of this is happening. You got a new variant that's spreading like wildfire. In Europe, some areas are closing now again. In America, LA County, I believe others will soon follow in terms of shutting down. So you might have more opportunity for bigger things, because more and more people, the original coronavirus surge, Steve, showed more people that were asleep. Yeah, America's fucked up. And we have inadequate care and programs for everything under the sun. So in a perpetual COVID environment where now it's the Delta variant, it might mutate into another one. I don't want to say it's a good opportunity. Nobody wants coronavirus or people dying, but we're in a current situation where more is needed from a government that generally has not been giving to the people for 40 years. So this is an opportunity for progressives to keep pointing to the inadequacies on healthcare, childcare, education, you name it, climate, because more and more people are going to be up shit's creek if this coronavirus continues.
Absolutely. Obviously, I've had coronavirus. You've had coronavirus.
I'm still coughing up my lungs. My asthma is getting worse, and I never had asthma before coronavirus. Months after I started developing asthma, I've been coughing. It sucks.
My lungs feel like parchment paper still. That's the best way I can describe it. Like stiff parchment paper, not soft and whatever. And it really fucked me up bad. I mean, I was hospitalized for almost 10 days. And I swear I stopped thinking about living. I thought I was going to die. And so I get really effing pissed every time I hear some wastoid that listen to Alex Jones saying it's a hoax or something like that, because I want to just give them my lungs and force them to take that on and then come back to me and say, now, what were you saying, moron? And, the other thing is that this demasking of society here for these assholes wear freaking deer hunting masks with urine all over it, and they can't handle a little freaking medical mask to go into the store. Are you fucking kidding me? What a waste of a sperm and an egg. I mean, seriously. And the idea that my kid now is at a daycare where every one of these teabagging fools thinks it's cool to take off your mask. We're about to take our kids out of daycare. We're about to take them out of there completely because we can't trust our own society to use their brain and not do something moronic. But the silver lining here is that where there is a crisis, there is also opportunities. I hate to quote Rom, the hitman Emmanuel, but never let a good crisis go to waste. And this is an opportunity, guys and gals, to be strategic, not be a LOL libertarian and think you don't want to wear your mask because it's force or some other crapiche, okay? But like start thinking like, how can I get healthcare? How can I leverage this to get healthcare? How can I leverage this to get universal, help, childcare, whatever. There's opportunities waiting to happen. And I'm sick to death of the Delta variant. It is attacking children. And this is empirical. This isn't like some oh, they're making it up crap. God, this is almost as bad as Sandy Hook lies. When I see the COVID deniers out there. And, ultimately, I think this is a real opportunity for us to both, A, find a way to make, lemonade with the lemons we're dealt, and also get ourselves back to wearing masks so that we're not freaking being super spreaders.
And by the way, to wrap this, because Tina Desiree Berg will be joining us next. To wrap this, I just want to say to all the naysayers who won't take the vaccine or won't wear a mask, everybody seems to be an armchair scientist for the last year and a half. And everybody, after they've read whatever stories or websites confirm what they've already concluded, seems to know, oh, ivermectin is the miracle drug, even though, new studies just came out that the data was misrepresented and it's not that effective. Or everybody is, an expert that, oh, no, masking, well, Fauci originally said you don't have to mask, so that just, he lied, and therefore masks are not effective. You're not a doctor. You're not a scientist. And by the way, a lot of people think there's even a conspiracy that they want to put the vaccine in your arm to put a chip in you. I'm here to tell you there's only one reason they want to put the vaccine in your arm. And unfortunately, it's not because the government are good or they actually care about saving people. It's actually not that. Remember, Joe Biden encouraged people to go to the polls in Florida, Arizona, and I forget the other state, while the pandemic was already roaring. And his advisor, Simone Sanders, remember, went on TV and said, well, the CDC says it's safe, despite them not saying it's safe. The government, Biden, they don't care if you live or die. Why they want everybody vaccinated is very simple. Very simple. Their donors want you vaccinated because they want capitalism to go back to normal. They don't want shutdowns. They don't want shutdowns. They don't want, half capacity. They want people working. So even though they're in their non-living wage jobs, they could keep ordering on Amazon. They could keep going to Walmart, and they could keep contributing to the capitalist order. That is why they want you vaccinated. It's not to put a microchip in you. It's not, to poison you. It's not to poison you. It's to end this. I use the Flint water crisis as an analogy. I've been covering it for years. The reason that the Republican governor at the time, the reason that a lot of Democrats in Michigan went along with this message, oh, the water's improving, the water's getting better, crisis over. And by the way, if you came late to this, major fucking story, major Flint cover-up bombshell coming out this week from Jen and I. This week, it's coming out. So hang on. We hope. We're not going to give you a day yet, but this week, it's coming out. We've been teasing this story for months. Finally, it's coming out. To me, it's one of the biggest stories I've ever personally done. So stay tuned. But the bottom line is, they wanted to declare the Flint water crisis over so they could get back to the business of gentrifying Flint. Because you're not exactly going to get real estate developers to come in and investors to come in if there's a raging fucking water crisis. Now, a pandemic is different, but it's the same thought. The capitalist order can only go back to business as usual if there's not a raging pandemic going on. So I would say, and with all due respect, I had two people over the weekend tell me, well, maybe if people stop disrespecting us and our choice, we'll be more encouraged to do it. I don't give a shit about your feelings to those unvaccinated. I care that I protect myself, my wife, my niece, my nephew who are not vaccinated. And by the way, the people that I go and interview. If I go to Flint, for example, these people are already immunocompromised. Some of them I've spoken to cannot get the vaccine. Their doctors have told them your body can't handle it. because they're so immunocompromised. So I'm not really interested in your feelings of respect or disrespect. What I'm interested in is protecting myself, my family, and you should be interested in doing the same thing. And if not, if you don't care about protecting yourself, how about care about protecting others? It's a thought. And if you're really, really still doubting it, I got news for you. The host of Fox and Friends this morning, Fox and Friends on Fox News, told their viewers, go get vaccinated. Steve, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm begging you all, please check out our new Untouchables series. It's very, very important. We are really trying to mobilize people in the back end with legal support and getting the word out about the elite control fraud that has been taking place in this country for many years. I'm begging you, new Untouchables, come to our website and check it out. Also, be ready for this march. This march, there's some different factions in here. There's state-based folks. I'm not a state-based guy, but I am a national Medicare for all guy that wants a full-blown free health service. Focus on this march. Find a way to make this organizing work for us. And beyond that, I hope every one of you stays safe. I am terribly worried about this Delta variant. So thank you, Jordan. I appreciate it. And say hello to Tina for me. And Jen.
By the way, can I just say about this march, I've been too busy to pay attention. I don't really give a damn about the squabbling about who was behind this march or, all that stuff. It doesn't matter who's behind the march, whatever. It's not neo-Nazis behind the march. It matters that hopefully a lot of people will be out marching for Medicare for all. So can people stop with the Twitter buffoonery about who's behind the march and this, that, and the other thing? It's just ridiculous. Like, it's about Medicare for all. Just like Forced to Vote was about Medicare for all, not personalities. Just stop. And definitely check out the the new Untouchables. Where could people find that, Steve?
So come to realprogressives.org and go to our media section, New Untouchables, or you can go to our Real Progress in Action YouTube channel. Please go there, subscribe, and you can follow me at SD Grumbine on YouTube. Please, we need your help. And Jordan, thank you. I appreciate it.
And by the way, to the 470 people watching right now, do me a favor. Go subscribe to Real Progress. Is that the YouTube channel?
Real Progress in Action. Yes.
Real Progress in Action. Go subscribe right now. Go watch their videos rather than watching 75 fucking videos on TYT a day. Please. I'm not a TYT fan, but can people start watching actual substance instead of, 75 channels ranting about TYT? I know it's clicky. I know they're, growing their followers by every day. It's like as the jank turns, this soap opera. But there's like real shit to cover. I'm just sick of it. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, joining us from her green screen, her literal green screen in Los Angeles.
My literal green screen.
Tina Desiree Berg, actress, journalist, frankly, Nazi hunter at this point.
That's fair.
Does great work freelancing for us often. And Tina, before we get to the bonkers protest you covered and the footage of a LAPD cop, I mean, I don't care if it's rubber bullets or not, literally shooting a protester like at point blank range, which, yes, a rubber bullet at point blank range could kill you, it could blind you, it could maim you. I know you might have thoughts on what we were just talking about.
Oh, yeah. No, I love that you guys were talking about the Delta variant, because believe it or not, I just had a close call with this because a photojournalist friend of mine that I've been spending time with at protests just literally sent me a message a couple days ago saying she tested positive and she is fully vaccinated. So I think I should probably go get a test too, even though I'm fully vaccinated. Who knows? I mean, we both had masks on during the protest, but that doesn't mean it couldn't spread.
And also, like, I know I'm not trying to be condescending to people, so I know that it's hard to grasp. Vaccines across the board are not 100% effective in contracting it. You could get the flu if you have a flu shot. If you're an infant that's vaccinated, because when you're born, you get your booster shots and all that, you could still pick up illnesses.
That's right.
So a lot of people are like, well, why should I get the vaccine? People with the vaccine are getting it. Right. But those people are dramatically less at risk.
Yeah, it's about probabilities.
To be seriously ill or die. And I think I heard the number earlier. 97, 98% of the cases nationally over the last few months have been unvaccinated people. So, yeah, it's really alarming.
Yeah.
And where you are, LA County, they're
It's
reinstating
a
the
surge. Yeah,
mask mandate.
There's a surge, and I think it's mainly Delta. But it is true that, so for example, the person I know that I don't want to say her name, but she has had no symptoms. She only had a test because she was taking a job assignment and she had to go somewhere, so they wanted to test her. So it was random that she found this out. She had no symptoms. But it is the case that if you're at least vaccinated, you're more likely to not get very sick, not have symptoms, and certainly not die. So there is a benefit to the vaccine, even if it's not 100% efficacious. But no, you're right. No vaccine is ever 100%. Never has been. That's why herd immunity matters so much.
And by the way, let me tell you something. For those that aren't vaccinated, I don't want to be lecturing too much. You might not die from coronavirus, but more and more people, even a year later, are starting to develop lingering things from it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jen, you know Jen's story. She's got severe long haul COVID. Frankly, the only reason she's able to work and function is because of Adderall, which is a Band-Aid. Thank you, Catherine, $4.99 in the super chat. I don't have long haul COVID, but I didn't have asthma before COVID. Now I have asthma. It seems to pop up like every couple months. I've been coughing for days. I used my inhaler before I came live, so right now I'm not coughing. But asthma is not fun. I already have back problems that I've been coughing so much. My lower back hurts from coughing so much. I know other people that still don't have taste or smell like a year after having COVID.
Wow.
There are a lot of people that, they had it, they dealt with it, and they don't have long-lasting symptoms. But it's not just about going to the hospital or dying. You can get long-lasting symptoms from COVID. So I hope, I personally, this is the selfish part of me. I don't want to be dealing with COVID for the next 3 years, 5 years, because now it's Delta variant. But if people still don't get vaccinated, not just here, but part of the problem is other people who would want to get vaccinated in other countries,
right,
can't. And by the way, I've seen people saying, "Well, look at Israel; they're almost fully vaccinated, and they're now having a surge." Yeah, because people from other countries are coming in that aren't vaccinated.
Right.
It's not like so. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, none of us are isolated when it comes to public health.
Right. Absolutely. So, Tina, I'd say over the last year or so, you've been doing a lot of reporting on the growing white supremacist domestic terrorist threat. Even before January 6th, you were investigating groups like the 3 Percenters, other groups that I can't remember. You've been doing a lot of work that, frankly, is dangerous and probably mind-numbing, seeing this level of hate. But recently, there was an incident in LA. I'll let you explain it. It originated at a spa. Can you kind of talk about what was alleged and what's the actual facts?
Right. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, well, actually almost 3 weeks ago, there was a viral video that came out because Tucker Carlson put it on his show. And it was a woman who was inside a spa that's in Koreatown. It's a traditional Korean spa. So there is, it's a traditional bathhouse. So she basically came out and started yelling at the staff, saying that there was a man flashing his penis in the, specifically, I think she was saying that it was the children's area of the dressing room area. And it was only supposed to be women in there. So she had this whole video that he picked up, threw out there. And for reasons I don't understand, Glenn Greenwald jumped on the bandwagon. So flash forward, it's now been shown that it's between the LAPD investigation as well as many journalists that have looked into it. This is probably all a hoax. I can't say that that's 100% the case, but it seems to be the case. Having said that, some folks decided to do a pro-trans rally in front of the spa in support of their decision to, not cave to this individual and to hatred. And what happened is as they were protesting, we had a lot of outside agitators that started coming into this particular protest. I saw somebody get stabbed. I saw another press member have a guy came up behind this individual, and I can identify him. His name is Aaron Simmons. He's been active at many of these Trump rallies. He came in behind and he hit this press member as hard as he could with a lead pipe that he pulled out of his backpack and then ran off. Incidentally, he also managed to post the body cam footage that he was wearing and admits to doing it and basically says, I enjoyed cracking this guy on the head. So why he would post that on the internet is beyond me. So I'm sure he will get at some point arrested for that. Anyway, but then it ended up there was a Mali and an activist that I actually do know was stabbed in the leg by another individual who is, as of now, not identified because he was so covered up. It's really hard to tell who this individual is. But it was very violent. And I think in the aftermath of that, what I was really disturbed by is the individual that was stabbed, the sheriff's department actually visited him in the hospital and accused him of inciting a riot, which I cannot understand. This guy is a victim of a very serious crime. If that blade had hit his femoral artery, he could have bled out there on the street. I just can't even imagine what these cops were thinking doing that. Now, again, this was the sheriff's department, not the LAPD. Anyway, so then this last Saturday, there was round two. The right-wingers had decided that they were going to come in and stage an anti-trans protest. So a lot of QAnon folks. Arthur Shaper was there. He is the founder of Mass Resistance, which is a not only just anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigration, sort of a John Tanton kind of follower guy. He showed up. Base Spartan was there. Folks know who Base Spartan is. His real name is John Toronto. He was most famous for wearing that kind of Trojan outfit up in the Portland area protests about a year ago. Even I think Vice Magazine did a piece on him. But he's a local down here in Southern California. So what's wild to me is everybody thinks, California is this incredibly liberal, blue, progressive state, but we harbor a lot of hate here in this state. We have a lot of neo-Nazi groups. We have a lot of white nationalist kind of anti-everything sort of groups that proliferate here, and a lot of fascism. So it's not surprising to me that a lot of the January 6 folks that have now been arrested and indicted are from California, and they are folks that I have, seen at protests and what have you.
So I want to show just some of the footage from Saturday, which includes a woman being, shot like right up
Point
close. Colin, if you could play some of that.
Get on the sidewalk! What's your badge number? Get on the sidewalk! What's your badge number? You just hit a woman. What's your badge number? I told her to get on the sidewalk. Get back. Get back. What's your badge number? Get back. You just hit a woman. Call the station. What is your badge number? Call the station and find out. I need your badge number. I'll tell you later. Fuck you! Hey, what's up? Get back! Right there. I got a little. No!
I cringe every time I see that.
Is this fucking Fallujah or Los Angeles?
No, I cringe every time I see this. Yeah, I was standing right there and I saw them pull out these less lethals. I think it's also important part of the conversation to know that currently the LAPD has an injunction against them for using less lethals. At the end of June, judge ruled on this. So they're not supposed to shoot them at protesters within point blank range. That's against the injunction. They're supposed to be trained. You have to be trained to use them, which is why you don't see all of the officers with these ammunitions now, only a few of them. But they're supposed to shoot the ground. And what kills me is if you look in the video very slowly in the back, you'll see the QAnon, I want to call them Trump cultists at this point because they're sort of in a cult. They've gone from Trump now to, all of these other things, but they're not dispersing. This group is the same group that we've seen travel and agitate throughout the state. But you can see them they're actually throwing water bottles at the LAPD from behind, and I caught some of that. But meanwhile, they're attacking the pro-trans individuals that I was standing next to at this particular point. And there's some other footage where I was on the Trump side too. I try to get a little bit of everything. But there was absolutely no reason for this officer to shoot that person. And you can hear them talking in the back. One of them says the one with the ponytail, the one in all black. I mean, so they're clearly targeting somebody for some reason. It's not clear to me as to why that was. But regardless, it's inexcusable violence. I was shocked when they did it. You can hear me in the back saying that's not protocol. And I later almost got arrested. So they had me in the kettle and they would not let me go for a good 15 minutes.
So to remind people, less lethal is rubber bullets. Right. They're not less lethal. If you shoot someone close enough, you could kill them. I remember at Standing Rock, a guy next to me was shot at point blank range and his scalp almost fucking flew off. He had a gaping, I don't want to say hole, but a gaping wound in his forehead. I don't know. I don't think he died, but I don't know what happened to him. Bertram Miller. Jordan, could you please ask Tina to explain the connection to these incidents that Glenn Greenwald and the trans community have to the issue?
I actually can, and I'm sorry, I should have gone into more detail on that, not to be confusing. So at the very first protest, there was a video that also went viral on Twitter. It was kind of taken out of consequence, and in my opinion, very inconsequential to the day. So there were a lot of religious bigots there. They were shouting things like, "You're animals, you're going to burn in hell," very hateful rhetoric coming out of these folks. She was with all of these anti-trans folks saying very hateful things. So at that particular point in time, there had been so much violence already, and the police were not preventing any of it, really. At the second protest, you see them trying to separate the lines, right? At the first protest, that wasn't happening at all, which is why you had people getting stabbed and what have you. So basically, there was a video of the pro-trans protesters chasing her away from where the trans people were standing in front of the spa. So you had trans protesters standing there with their signs, "We love We Spa, we support We Spa, thank you," sort of thing. And these folks were basically trying to keep all of these other folks away from them because they felt at that particular junction it just wasn't safe. So this video, you see this woman getting screamed at, yelled at, and chased out of town by a mob, so to speak. And if you just see this, 30 seconds of video, you think, my God, what the hell am I seeing? What I'm disappointed in with Glenn is he's a journalist. He knows better. Why would he not find out the context of that? Because I'm pretty certain if he heard the whole context and saw everything that happened that day, he wouldn't be saying the things that he was saying, because he was name calling several journalists like names, like childish names on his Twitter. It was really sad, actually.
Why was he name calling them based on what?
On them saying, like, Glenn, you don't know what you're talking about. You weren't there. Like, because he was saying this behavior was mobbish and inappropriate and a bad way to represent trans rights. And he was going on and on about it. But I think, I don't know. I don't understand why he would do that. I mean, I feel like he's maybe been around Tucker Carlson too long. I'm saying it publicly.
Well, I mean, the mob was responding to the anti-trans actual mob. So,
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I had people coming into my mentions like, well, where's the video of this woman? Because it was only like an edited version that Colin did. It was maybe 30 seconds. They're like, why is it only 30 seconds? I'm like, because it's really that inconsequential to what happened that day.
Right.
You guys want to make this the story, and I'm telling you, it's not the story. And I need to understand how folks like the Washington Post ran a piece on this and didn't even mention the stabbings. How do you run a piece on what happened in We Spa that day and not mention somebody got stabbed? And there were two people. The guy also, incidentally, did a friendly fire stab. I don't know what else you would call this. As one of his comrades is pulling him out of the melee, he turns around and stabs her in the arm. So she also was hurt, even though they were friends. And then there was body cam video of that posted. They were back up at MacArthur Park, and he's like giving her first aid for what he did.
Right.
So... And again, these folks are all associated with that same group that we've seen in Tahunga, we've seen in Huntington Beach, Pacific Beach, Sacramento. So they do travel around and they instigate. Several of them are associated with Proud Boys. There were a couple of Proud Boys there. One was arrested actually on Saturday from Pacific Beach. I'm not sure what his name is off the top of my head. But again, it's part of the same group of right-wing agitation that happens.
Well, I also think whether it's Glenn, who yeah, I don't agree with everything he tweets. Let's just put it that way. But whether it's Glenn or other people that are doing this, like, yeah, you could have an opinion on things if you're not there, but you can't have your own facts if you're not there.
Right.
So, a lot of people were like, oh, January 6th, it was just like a protest and there wasn't no violence. They either were not there or they were there, but not like in the corridor where our cameraman was.
Exactly.
Where, literally, it was like the Lion King hyenas. And John had nearly had cracked ribs from that. So I think, like, particularly if you're a journalist, like I always like to say, well, I wasn't there, so I can't really say for certain. I mean,
but let me find out, right?
Yeah, if you have a lot of sources, if you have sources that you trust who were there, that's different. But you still have to say I wasn't there. But to me, beyond the transphobia of this story, there's another element. After George Floyd, we had these marches. They were great. I said, imagine if 1/10 of these millions of people on the ground started protesting with their wallets. Imagine that. But the LAPD has been out of control, for decades.
Yeah.
But throughout these protests, whether it's Black Lives Matter protests, whether it's Trump rallies where there's counter-protesters, whether it's now this trans battle, California is supposed to be supposedly progressive. LA is supposed to be supposedly progressive. The police are like a goddamn MMA fight. And these cops, why do you even have guns with rubber bullets at a protest?
In the first place. I agree. No, they shouldn't. And 54%, people need to understand this. 54% of the Los Angeles city budget goes to the LAPD. They get more than half of the budget. So they have an infinite amount of money that they spend on these toys. And it slays me because meanwhile, serious crime is not getting solved and investigated. Their close rate on serious crime is very low. It's less than 5%. So I don't know why we are in this space, but something needs to change. Obviously, it's and I think it's hit the wall because you now saw, for the first time I saw at least, right wingers yelling at the cops and throwing water bottles at them. This was coming from the side that normally is like, "Yay, police, blue line, blah blah blah." Blue lives matters. So when you see those folks now really angry, and actually at one moment, I should see if I could find this clip. One of the Trump individuals actually said to the police, "Why do you give BLM and Antifa everything they want?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Unreal.
I know. I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't happen. What are you talking about?" But he was just angry that these people almost expect, and I think John Farina might say the same thing about January 6th. They deeply expect the police to join them in their shenanigans, right?
Right.
And some do. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of ex-cops in there. In fact, one of the 3%ers that'll be in the 3% video we're doing with Status Coup, he is the ex-police chief for La Habra. So he's La Habra's in between Orange and LA County. It's definitely part of Southern California. He was one of the 3%ers that was there in January 6th, has now been arrested and indicted. So there's definitely a crossover that does exist. But at some point, they still have jobs, right? They're not going to openly join these guys.
Eileen MC, $8 in the super chat. Bravo and thanks for fighting the good fights. And Catherine Class, $24.99. Thank you.
Wow, generous. Thank you.
Another thing. I've seen it at like Trump flag drops that I covered or other Trump protests. The cops, they're almost like parading around with the right wingers, but the Antifa people. They're cracking down with their batons and all this. Right. It's very clear they are there to create safe passage for right-wing lunatics and to crack skulls for Antifa people. And it's crazy. And another thing that's crazy is, well, Gavin Newsom is a Democrat, supposedly progressive. Villarosa, is he still the mayor?
No, we have Eric Garcetti now, who is now, yeah, he's going to be leaving to become the ambassador to India, I believe. I can't remember now.
Whatever, another corrupt asshole.
He's corrupt.
He was on Biden's, I think, something committee.
Yes, he was.
But, this brutality There's no penalty.
They're okay with it. Nah. You know what? Because they're okay with it. These neoliberals, they're more concerned with the LAPD protecting private property than they are anything else. So time and time again, you'll see that that's the main mandate of the cops, right? They're not interested. This other stuff is tangential to them, I think, in a lot of ways. And the reason Eric Garcetti et al., all of these very wealthy neoliberal Democrats in the city of Los Angeles are okay with it is because they do want their personal property and their private property to be protected. And they see Antifa as the problem. I remember back during the Echo Park night when that was going on, one of the LAPD officers had a piece of paper in his hand and it said Antifa on it. So I'm not sure what the other words were. But they do have it in their mind that Antifa is the problem and the root of all of these things. After the hate crime against Belinda Nebo, for example, the LAPD actually said to one of my journalist friends that was trying to help Belinda by giving him footage, well, we think they were Antifa instigators. And it's like, no, they're not Antifa instigators. This guy here has been at Beverly Hills wearing pro-Trump stuff. None of these people are Antifa instigators. Why do you guys have to frame everything from that perspective? Is your bias so deep and so screwed up that you can't even imagine that your buddies, your Trump buddies, are actually this violent? I mean,
right.
Come on.
Well,
it's
also,
become ridiculous.
Beyond this protest, it doesn't seem to me like January 6th and, today was the first conviction. I think the guy's getting 8 months or something for trespassing. It doesn't seem to me January 6th has at all steered these folks off.
No.
Whether it be these anti-trans protesters or the white supremacists you've been reporting on and investigating. It seems like it's only emboldened them to go further. I mean, we have the crazies saying Trump's going to be reinstated soon. Right. To be clear, YouTube, that's not our view. We're saying no. Colin put up something, Trump won't be reinstated.
Hurry before they delete us.
You have to put it visually on the screen so YouTube understands you're not saying it and you're not pushing it. But honestly, we were talking about the threat of coronavirus. Like, I'm just being real. I think I said the genie's already out of the bottle, whether you get rid of Trump or not. I'm glad he's gone from the White House. But this hate, whether it's the same people pushing the same people pushing not to take the vaccine are the people that pushed Stop the Steal.
That's right.
And they kind of bleed over into these anti-trans protests, anti-Black Lives Matter protests, and all of it.
QAnon, it's definitely part of the same group. This group also travels around. They go to retailers that have mask policies, and they come in there not wearing their masks, chanting and holding signs and causing ruckuses all over the state. So it's definitely all crisscrossed.
Absolutely.
They're all connected.
Absolutely. So for you, you've lived in LA, California your whole life. Where do you go from here if you have supposedly one of the most blue progressive states in the country who, with complete control of the governor, the state Senate, the state House, couldn't pass single payer, or it was about to pass, but somehow it didn't get passed. Where do you go from here? Because California is on fire. The LAPD is, borderline killing people. Soon real shots are coming out.
They are killing people. I mean, we had another, we should mention this maybe. We had another bad shoot last week on Hollywood Boulevard where they shot and killed a man holding a lighter. So when they gave the press conference, they said it was a replica gun. So I'm like, replica gun, that means it's a toy or something, right? And sure enough, they released a photo later on that day, and it wasn't even a toy gun. It was a lighter. It was clearly a butane lighter. But once again, they shoot first and they ask questions later. And some people say that training would fix this. I'm not convinced that that's the case because the folks that are doing the training, they're training these guys to shoot first and ask questions later. If you've seen any of the training videos, the Grossman videos in particular are really telling. You'll see really quickly that they are trained to do this. That's the problem.
Right. And I loved in the video, the protester was demanding the cop's badge number, and he said, yeah, call the precinct. Oh, I'll give it to you later. So it's just not only the violent barbarianism, but they know they could do whatever they want with impunity, no accountability. They don't have to say who they are at all.
No.
I mean,
well, they're supposed to. That's again, all of these things are against protocol. And what ends up happening is they don't get punished for breaking protocol, and the department ends up paying a lawsuit that the taxpayers are funding. It's a vicious cycle that we're in. I mean, full disclosure, I'm in litigation right now in a class action with the LAPD. So full disclosure there. So I'm part of that. But, as you know, the LAPD shot out my back window of my car with intention, and they broke the side door thing where the window is with a tear gas canister. So, and they did it on purpose.
Right. And also, I don't know if it was the LAPD, but you've had notes left on your car that are kind of threatening.
Proud Boys. Yeah,
Proud
Proud
Boys.
Boy.
Right. So.
Actually, that only worried me for 2 seconds, only because I thought, well, what if this guy's able to trace my home address off of my license plate? They obviously have my license plate now, but nothing came of that so far, at least I should say. Here's the thing, though. I mean, what we do, Jordan, no matter whether it's in Standing Rock or, on a skirmish line with these guys, there's some level of dangerousness to it. But I think the reason we do what we do is because we're motivated to make the world a better place and to expose these things. I know for me that I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think probably the same is for you too. So that sort of just comes with the territory.
Right. Absolutely. And before you go, let's do a little shameless plug here. Tina, I told the audience we have a Flint story coming out.
Yeah.
Without getting into detail, you know what it's about. On the scale of 0 to 10, what would you say this is in terms of
it's way over
corruption, bombshell?
This is way past 10, Jordan. This is way past 10. I'm glad that it's finally coming out this week, though. People need to hear about this stuff. And here's the thing that I think it really exposes without giving anything away. Political corruption exists in both parties, and it's time that people realize that and started treating the plutonomy as the plutonomy. This isn't necessarily this, right? It's this. Like you said earlier, the state of California, we have all these Democrats. Why is this stuff happening? It's happening because they're wealthy elites and they want to protect their wealth. That is their number one thing that they want to do. Number two are all the social issues that they talk about, right? I mean, we've all seen that meme where where the bomber's dropping bombs, and on the Republican side, it's just the bomber, and on the Democrat side, it has a BLM flag, right? This is a very accurate description of what happens, right? Because these things are all, in a hierarchy to what's important to them, and it's at the bottom. Fixing economic problems, making real structural changes that are necessary, i.e. the minimum wage, i.e. maybe a UBI, doing something to transfer wealth back from the plutonomy. This is so far below that it's never going to get done unless we force their hand, right?
Right.
So I love your vest, by the way. I need one of those.
Well, by the way, there's another element about the story that's coming out, again, without giving anything away.
Right.
Again, it's
a little tough.
It's a major Flint water cover-up story. I'll leave it
Major.
at that.
Huge.
Major.
It's beyond it's unbelievable.
Like in a sane world, we would have been having every single outlet beating down our doors.
It should be headlines. Exactly.
Right. But there's another element here. Why almost 7.5 years after this water switch, why is the information we're going to reveal, why has it not been revealed yet? Why? I mean, I'm not saying it was easy to gather this reporting and information, but I don't live in Michigan.
Right.
The Detroit Free Press is there. The Detroit News is there. The Flint Journal is there. Chicago Tribune's not so far. I mean, the New York Times has a bureau in Michigan, in the Midwest. Why is it that this corruption, whether it be in Flint, L.A., wherever, Erin Brockovich was going through California. She was pleading with the media. She was pleading with the media before she became a household name about discontamination, environmental all that. Why is it that 7.5 years later, after a community was poisoned and since then left to die, I don't give a shit about the proclamations that the water is fine. Go to Flint, spend an hour with residents. You'll soon find the water is not, completely fine. But why is it that corruption and, frankly, a cover-up that was just hanging out there to be found, if you're a real journalist, it's gold. If you care about, it's gold in terms of if you care about exposing terrible people. It's gold if you're a selfish prick and just want to climb the ladder in journalism and win a Pulitzer or whatever. The reason is that these things require independent outlets. I've been there 17 times. I think Jen is up to 8 or something. Is because the corporate media looks the other way. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Tina.
It's impossible to get them to publish this stuff. They don't want to do it. They refuse to do it. And in fact, I had a conversation with somebody from the LA Times last week that they were trying to include some of this stuff in their reporting, and their editor wouldn't allow it. I mean, it's remarkable to me that this is the norm at this point when it comes to just about because it's all corporate media at this point. It really is. And it's unfortunate.
Also, I think I told the audience this. I don't know if you know it. I drove to Michigan during the pandemic, so I didn't have to fly. Like during the heart of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
It was raging. My back is still recovering from that drive there and back.
That's a long drive.
I drove straight both ways. On the way back, I was trying to beat a blizzard. And I met with an editor from the Detroit Free Press in a parking lot. We sat in our cars with the windows open. I won't get into detail, but I literally handed him on a plate incontrovertible evidence of the former governor of Michigan, who, by the way, is about to head to trial for a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
A misdemeanor.
It's ridiculous.
I handed him the evidence. He says to me, yeah, we regret not doing more on Flint. I said, well, here's your chance to make up for it.
Yeah.
And then he gives me a bunch of bullshit. Well, this is kind of, circumstantial. I'm like, yeah, we're not prosecutors. We don't need to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly.
Most of journalism
I'd say it's more than, I'd say it's more than circumstantial. It's pretty obvious what's going on.
Right. But he said in terms of circumstantial, like we had a very suspicious phone call tree with the governor as chief of staff, the health director. He said, well, we don't know what was said on the calls. Okay, well, this isn't my opinion.
We know what actions they took.
Right. We have documents showing that criminal prosecutors concluded that these phone calls were the governor as chief of staff and the health department director trying to stop news of a deadly bacterial outbreak from going public as it was spreading and killing people. That's not my opinion. That's what the prosecutors concluded. You don't think that should be reported? You don't think it should be reported that these people had 22 phone calls in 2 days, but investigators found that most of them hadn't talked before that ever, but 22 phone calls in 2 days? There was other stuff. We found a briefing to the governor from October 2014 that mentioned the Legionella outbreak. Why is that important? He told Congress he didn't know about it until January 2016.
Clearly lying.
Literally, the example is, legally, a prosecutor is obligated to prosecute if they learn certain information. There are legal statutes that a prosecutor cannot look the other way if they've discovered certain things. Unfortunately, in journalism, that doesn't exist. But if it was this isn't just an issue of a freelance dreamer publishes, pitches the Rolling Stone and they think it's, they think it's Hunter S. Thompson-esque and Rolling Stone's not into it. This is like you hand somebody a cover up.
Like the document.
You hand somebody a cover up and they look the other way. Why is that? And by the way, it's not just the Detroit Free Press. I met in person 3 years ago with the editor of the Daily Beast at the time about what Jen and I exposed in terms of Snyder and his administration cheating on the water testing in Flint. He was all down with it. All of a sudden, a week later, he's not down with it anymore. Rolling Stone. Literally, the editor-in-chief told us on the phone while we were in Flint, I think we're close. I think we're ready to sign the contract. And then puts me in touch with his subordinate. And then a week later, they backtrack. Listen, this is not just about our Flint reporting. This is about all these things. I have told people for a long time, Tina, sure, protest outside Nancy Pelosi's office. Protest outside Mitch McConnell's office. Protest, Sunrise Movement. Protest. Indigenous protests. All those things are great. But if you're not going to protest the corporate media, I don't mean violently. I just mean get bodies outside.
Yeah, I get
it. Get bodies outside of your local media outlets. Get bodies outside of the New York Times office, CNN. if you're just going to allow them to be very comfortable as they prop up the status quo, then don't expect much to change in this country.
Oh, I agree. The fourth estate is no longer the fourth estate. It's the fourth fixer-upper. It's so sad, though, Jordan, because you think back, I mean, publications that put out the Pentagon Papers, major things like this will now back away from what you're trying to expose, which is asinine to me. It's like, what are you guys doing? And again, not to bring this up, but how do you report on what happened at WeSpa and not mention the stabbing at all, let alone not make it your headline? How does that happen? It's a remarkable thing that we're seeing. But you're right, it's corporate media, and this is totally anecdotal. But I was at a birthday soiree a couple nights ago with a bunch of journalist friends, and the ones that did work at mainstream sites were all complaining about how they cannot do the pieces they want to do, where they're shut down. So it's definitely widespread, and it's problematic because people still want to trust news as being a public service. They need to be able to have that, right? They want that, they need that, and it's just in absolute tatters at this point.
And I don't want to speak for her, but Jen kind of shared this, that she just recently did a New York Times training on digital security, and she spoke with some of the journalists in the training, and they said they can't get the New York Times to approve certain things. So we often criticize the corporate media, but the reality is there's a lot of journalists that maybe are on the badass spectrum. And
they're there and they can't do anything.
Real
exactly.
shit, but they're not allowed to. Welcome new YouTube member, Dale. Woohoo! Welcome, Dale. But I also want to point out, Tina, I mean, there's another element to this. I'm not going to get into names, but I know an editor that I used to work with who edited one of our stories for Flint, and they moved on to NBC News. And I pitched the story that we're going to break this week. I pitched it to her, and she didn't have final say, but she said, I'll pass it on to my boss at NBC News. And she got back to me, and I'm not criticizing her, it wasn't her decision, but she said, yeah, it's a tough one because, this happened so long ago, so it's not as relevant anymore. And, for this kind of investigation, you're going to have multiple people involved in terms of fact checking, art, creating art for the piece, copy editing, legal.
Wow.
And it's just a major investment of time and resources for ultimately something that's not going to
little payout.
Click.
They'd rather clickbait. Yeah, they'd rather make money off the clickbait.
She said it in a way that was sympathetic to us, like,
right.
And I was like, well, I know you're not going to rewire the dinosaurs you work with, but did they ever think that maybe it will click if they package it the right way? Did they ever think maybe it will click if you actually stop watering down the pieces as corporate media? Listen, the pieces that we've done for corporate outlets, when they're published, they are not the way they started.
Right.
They get watered down because all these corporate outlets are deathly afraid of legal problems and twist themselves into a pretzel to give the benefit of the doubt to government officials, corporations. Right. They don't want to lose access. They don't want to lose their invites to the cushy Christmas parties. So I said, I don't know, call me naive, but I think if you package the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
That would be rather clicky.
I agree.
The editor was with me, but she said that's the thing.
So, Jordan, do you recall the whole Gawker Peter Thiel lawsuit? Do you know what I'm referencing?
Yep.
I can't help but thinking in this moment in this conversation that did not have ultimately a very chilling effect on journalism. So, all right. So people that don't know what we're talking about, Gawker magazine, look, I'm not going to say they didn't, toe the line as far as tabloidism goes. They were, they were very direct in what they published it. Maybe some of it was crossing the line, but it was all still very truthful. Right. So, and whether you agree with that kind of journalism or not, I think that's sort of tangential to the point that a free press is a free press, and that shouldn't be up for debate no matter what kind of publishing you're doing. So they had run a piece on on the sex tape of the God, what's that guy's name? The wrestler, really popular wrestler. They'd run his sex tape. It turns out he sued them for it. Turns out though that
I think it was Hulk Hogan. Yeah, it was.
Was it Hulk Hogan? I can't remember now. Okay, so they published that. Turns out that he sues them, but what was telling is they backed away from part of the claim that would make it so that the insurance company would no longer respond to it, and then Gawker would be bankrupted, which was very sort of strange because you think if you're Hulk Hogan and you're going for a settlement, you're going to go for the max settlement, right? And you want the insurance company to pay because that's much deeper pockets. But that didn't happen. So turns out, I'm going to try to make a longer story short. Turns out that Peter Thiel was funding this lawsuit because he wanted Gawker Media to go out of business because he was angry about, they had a section of the site that was about what was going on in Silicon Valley. And he didn't like it. So here you have a wealthy elite guy.
He was angry, I guess, because they outed him or something.
They outed him too. That's true. Yes. Yeah. They outed him too. He's gay. They outed him. But point being is it okay for a wealthy guy, a wealthy elite to fund a lawsuit to shut down a publication just because you don't like them and to win that? They put Gawker out of business. This is what happened. I think that is a very disturbing thing. And I think it's really crazy to me that that didn't get more attention than it did. Also, I was really disturbed that the National Press Club had Peter Thiel come and speak as a guest. I was like, why would you do that? This guy, I understand that he's given you guys donations, but what he did is completely unconscionable. I can't get that word out.
Well, I'll ask you the question back. Is it okay for a wealthy elite to buy off the government to shut down the country?
No.
What Peter Thiel did in terms of shutting down Gawker is essentially what Peter Thiel and Jeff Bezos and the rest of them do in buying off our government, which
it's a bad precedent. Then
shuts down any real progress.
Exactly. And then Shelley Adelson went on to buy the Nevada State Press. So here's a situation where you have wealthy elites now not only control, Washington Post, Jeff Bezos. We're seeing this across the board. And there is a relationship here, in my opinion. There's a very strong relationship. And it's something that we should all be concerned about. Right. But I just found myself thinking about this when you were saying all these things, because I strongly believe that was a turning point for First Amendment in this country, and that it didn't get very much attention because a lot of people, like, for example, at the New York Times would look at Gawker as a tabloid, right? So they're like, yeah, but we don't do the same thing. That's not really the point, is it, though? Right. You really believe that a wealthy person should be able to fund somebody else's lawsuit to shut down a publication? That's okay? How is that okay?
Well, also, I tweeted this yesterday. Literally, the corporate media spent more time covering Jeff Bezos' venturism into space than the economic Hunger Games he created at Amazon.
Exactly.
Literally, They have glorified this fucking megalomaniac oligarch's vanity trip to space, and him first, Richard Branson, while people are fainting at Amazon, being carted off on stretchers at Amazon. People are homeless, sleeping in their cars after their shifts because they can't afford. I was just at Amazon last week covering this, and they don't want to talk about that. I think there's other elements to the Peter Thiel thing. Number one, there's more and more media outlets being bought up by private equity companies.
Yep.
Who then
100%.
lay off and strangle the companies with debt and then try to flip them. So you got private equity buying up these media companies. And also, the New York Times, Jen talked about it. She asked their lawyer at the training what his thoughts on Julian Assange were. And he basically answered, it's kind of it's a close call.
Wow. She didn't tell me that. That's insane.
Yeah.
No, there's no close call here. Right. That is unbelievable to me.
But again, you got corporate attorneys behind some of these biggest media outlets. You have major corporate investors behind a lot of these media outlets. You have a lot of these media outlets directly or indirectly have relationships with the government. In some cases, they get tax subsidies from the government. I know they have in Michigan. And they're allowing, Julian Assange to be a political prisoner and be politically tortured. Go figure why the New York Times hasn't covered the illegal prosecution against Steven Donziger. It's a bad.
Right. There's another big one. This is insane what's going on with Steve Donziger. It's insane.
Really, Brian Stelter and CNN would like you to believe the gravest threat to journalism is Trump calling them fake news.
No.
Trump definitely posed the threat to journalism, but I think the gravest.
But not the biggest.
The biggest threat is these corporate outlets that are literally distracting the masses and covering up what really. Honestly, in a sane system, Tina, if I went to outlets with what we're about to break this week on Flint, they would have been fighting.
They would have been fighting over to have it. I agree with you. In a weird turn of events, the whole fake news thing is stemming from the problem that we're talking about. So it's sort of like a snake eating its tail, right? I mean, and it's not that they're publishing fake news, but they are ignoring the real plights of real Americans, and they're bearing pieces that they don't think are flattering to either their ownership, their corporate advertisers, things of this nature. And they're not doing public service news at this point. It's kind of newsertainment. And I don't think any of that is up for debate at this point. And it is part and parcel to the problem.
Right.
If people don't trust the news, these are the reasons why.
I agree. And honestly, this is why I've kind of been dismayed, to say the least, the last few months of independent media, because independent media used to be kind of an alternative to the corporate media, an alternative to the infotainment, alternative to the sensationalism. But more and more, it just has become like this hot take machine.
Yeah.
With a side of like TMZ. I don't want to relitigate the whole thing. I've already said my piece about TYT and Jimmy and Aaron Mate. I don't need to relitigate the whole thing. But it's like, still, there's nonstop videos about TYT. I don't like TYT. But boy, imagine if all these channels...
People need to stop watching that shit. Stop watching the commentary on the commentary on the commentary. I don't know why anybody would want to watch this in the first place. But you're right. It's like a hamster wheel.
But also... how the hell are you going to counter corporate media if the alternative, which is supposed to be debunking corporate media, is spending more time in a circular firing squad? Which, let's be clear, most of the channels doing this are transparently, cravenly doing it for clicks.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And it's working. They're growing. Some of these channels are growing hand over fist in subscribers and all that. And it's clear when they do the rare shows they do where TYT's not in the headline or it's not one of these topics, their viewership goes back to normal. Because in reality, it's not so much that people are watching for these particular hosts. They just want to bash on TYT, and that's fine. I mean, I don't care if TYT exists or not.
Right.
I got my opinions, but it gets to a point like homelessness is exploding.
Right.
Mass evictions
there are more important issues.
Mass evictions have already been happening. Breonna Taylor is a cover-up, which we showed you on the road recently. Police are shooting people at point-blank range in L.A. L.A. is on fire. The Gulf is on fire. There's still mass shootings going on at an alarming rate. And Flint still doesn't have clean water 7.5 years later. So fucking A, can we please
talk about more important stuff?
Because, hey, I like a good food fight from time to time. Everybody does. I get it. Folks like their 90-Day Fiancé and all these things. But, Jesus, if independent progressive media is just going to become this
food fight, never ending.
Fucking, it's just bad. Any parting thoughts? I agree. Any parting thoughts before we go?
Now I have on my mind the whole thing that Biden administration has now put criticism of capitalism as part of the domestic terrorist group, the Antifa, on there. I'm a little bit disturbed by this. I don't know if anybody else is paying attention to this.
Yeah.
But as you know, Jordan, I've been working on a piece for this because we have had here in California, some of these activists have had the DOJ and the sheriff's department show up at their houses with sealed warrants, which means they don't know what's in the warrant. They don't have to be shown to the person. They're signed off on by a judge. The judge basically says it's going to be sealed because it's in the public interest for it to be sealed. I also spoke with another activist who had a subpoena that was sent to Twitter where they wanted his DMs, they wanted his connections, et cetera, all the private stuff. Twitter did not comply. They did send this individual a letter saying, if you want to quash it, we're going to give you 10 days to be able to do that, which he was fortunately able to do. So I'm working on putting something together with this, because now we've had up in Sonoma, California. So it's now like LA County, San Diego County, Sonoma County, a similar situation where somebody messaged me yesterday where they had another sealed warrant situation. So clearly there's something afoot here. I don't think, I was worried that in the wake of January 6th, that because generally when we've seen this like repeatedly, right, time and time again, if they go after the right-wing activists this hard, they go after the left-wing activists 1,000 times harder. And I think that J6 sort of paved the way for them to be able to do that. I mean, if you're so threatened by somebody criticizing capitalism, that's really your barrier. What are we doing here? Because capitalism is clearly failing most people in this country. Are you going to put everybody on a domestic terrorist list now? Is that what's happening?
Right. And by the way, we didn't even get to this. I don't think we have crazy time, but like came out yesterday, this private Israeli spyware has been used to hack the cell phones of journalists and activists worldwide. So,
why didn't Jordan? Can I ask you, why didn't this get more attention when Khashoggi was killed? Because they knew it was Pegasus that they had been using. He had clicked on a link that he had been sent, and Pegasus was able to go through every activist that he was speaking to.
I just want to explain so people get Pegasus. Okay. Pegasus is this program from this NSO group, which is an Israeli spyware group.
Private security, yeah.
And Pegasus has been used to basically hack activists, all over the world, their phones, other devices. So it's come out now that they've been hacking journalists all over the world. Phones, devices, other things. Why didn't it come up? Probably because most of these outlets are quasi okay with the hacks. Hey, remember, most of these outlets, Edward Snowden's bombshell was brought to them before Glenn Greenwald.
They didn't want it. Yeah,
and they didn't want
insane.
it. Exposing that the NSA was, spying on your dick pics or whatever. So,
right.
But this is pretty alarming. I mean, listen.
It's incredibly alarming. Look, you guys, people make fun of me because I have two phones, but this is why I have two phones. I have one that I use for communication, and then I have a second phone that I have all the apps on that I use for taking video with what have you. This is my communication phone, right? It's really beaten up, but the only thing on here is Signal. And even then, like, I worry that, I don't know, what if? Oh,
I just assume I'm being listened to and watched. That's why for some trips, when we've gone on the road, we've gone dark. Haven't gone live for a week.
Right.
Haven't sent out emails. We've just gone dark because I don't want to give anybody that might be tracking me any idea where I am, because some places you go to investigate, it's not particularly safe to go. So yeah, I think we're living in
Palantir, Peter Thiel, Palantir, that is another private security and firm. They create all of the software for ICE, for a lot of the local fire police departments. LAPD uses Palantir software. So, I mean, there's all of these things are so deeply integrated in the plutonymy at this point. I mean, we go back and talk about the Barrett Brown situation. I mean, he was jailed for 4 years when he worked on the H.B. Gary Stratfor leaks, more private intelligence firms. So if anybody wants to really talk about deep state, quote unquote, stuff and not and realize it's not conspiracy theory, look at some of that stuff. The corporations do spy on people.
If you notice, Jen Psaki is now Biden's press secretary is now saying that we'll have to talk to these social media platforms and give them a heads up on information that should be removed. No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Facebook is spewing with this bullshit anti-vax crap and is killing people. I actually agree with Biden to a certain degree. But frankly, that's why Facebook should be broken up. That's why Amazon should be broken up. I agree.
Exactly. Antitrust laws.
Not an Elizabeth Warren person, but I agreed with her on breaking up big tech and regulating them. But we're going to have Jen Psaki as the arbiter of what's authoritative. Like YouTube's CEO, where we are right now, has openly said, we elevate authoritative voices and networks like CNN and Fox News. I shit you not. That's what they say.
No, right. And they don't care about veracity is my problem. If they really, what's insane to me about that is just because it's CNN doesn't mean they're telling you the truth or not telling you the truth. What the commitment should be is to veracity, no matter if it's somebody in their basement or if it's a major network. But they're not interested in that, right? Again, they're protecting corporate interests. That's the problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. All right, folks, I got to go walk my dog. Follow Tina Desiree Berg on the Twitter. It's at, what is it? At Tina.
I'm currently trolling Andy No.
At Tina Desiree Berg. She's doing great work, doing a lot of stuff for us, freelancing, and will continue. And like I said, a few things. Number one, tomorrow, 4:30 Eastern, I'll be exclusively live on our Rockfin channel. Joining me will be Graham Elwood, another Rockfin regular there. So that's tomorrow at 4:30. We usually do it on Wednesdays, but it's going to be tomorrow this time. So definitely sign up. Tina, I don't know if you know this. We already have 53 Rockfin subscribers. Why that's so amazing is if we get to 100, our guaranteed, because right now we get a guaranteed amount from Rockfin, it shoots up. Once we get to 100.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Right
so
on.
after 2 weeks, after only 2 shows, we're already at 53. So if we get to 100, that's money in the bank, baby. Not for me to go to dinner, but for us to be able to pay Tina to do more, for us to, God willing, be able to go in the field more. There's very little things we have in terms of guaranteed revenue coming in. It usually fluctuates. YouTube fluctuates every month and has been fluctuating not so good with their suppression. Other things fluctuate, fundraising fluctuates, but to be independent and to be successful, you have to grow many different revenue streams. So you're not relying on YouTube, you're not relying on Twitch, and you're growing in other places. That's why we launched a Substack recently, which I've been writing a lot at, and we just released another piece for paid subscribers earlier today on what Steve and I were talking about earlier. Bernie actually doing something positive, and will the squad follow? So you can check that out on Substack. That's statuscoup.substack.com. But also Rockfin, besides the guaranteed revenue, it actually allows us to cover things without concern. Like, there's things I don't say here, unfortunately, because I have to self-censor, or we're going to get kicked off YouTube. So if you got $9.99 a month, I know a lot of people might not, but if you got $9.99 a month, become a Rockfin premium subscriber. You get our weekly exclusive live stream there, as well as others who are on Rockfin. Graham is on Rockfin. And,
I have a Rockfin too.
Lee Camp, Tina Desiree Berg, $9.99 for all those great people. And after the Rockfin promotion, again, major Flint story coming out this week. I can't wait. So definitely stay tuned. I think you're going to be proud to be a Status Coup member when you read this story. Hint, hint, sign up. statuscoup.com/join. I think we're over 1,900 members. We've basically been like close to 2,000, then we lose people, then we gain people. statuscoup.com/join. Would love to hit 2,000, lickety split. I think you're going to be proud to support us. And if you can't support us financially, just keep sharing. These Flint story, like a story like we're going to break, it's not sexy to CNN. So the only way we're going to get other media to pick it up is for you to push it as hard as you can everywhere. Thank you, Tina. And
absolutely.
We will see you guys tomorrow, Rockfin, 4:30 Eastern Time, 1:30 Pacific with Graham Elwood. Peace out.